Human shared his only heat pack with an alien girl. Her quiet gesture later spoke the loudest. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character. The wind clawed across the frozen ridge like a living thing, humming against the metallic plates of Ethan Ward's survival suit. The cold wasn't just cold out here. It felt sharp, like it had weight, settling into his shoulders and pushing breaths into short visible puffs. His headlamp flickered across broken rocks glazed with sheets of ice, each one catching the light just long enough to remind him how far he was from warmth. He whispered the title of the emergency log he'd be forced to file later, as if saying it out loud anchored him to the moment. Human shared his only heat pack with an alien girl. Her quiet gesture later spoke the loudest. The words sounded unreal in his mouth, like something from a story rather than the biting night pressing against him now. The temperature display on his wrist dipped again, blinking its warning. 12 degrees Fahrenheit and falling. His team had been separated hours earlier when the ground collapsed beneath them, splitting the mission into chaos. Ethan had crawled out of a narrow crevice alone, shaken, suit scraped, oxygen pack dented. Still functional, though? Functional enough to keep walking. His gloved hand tightened on the last heat pack clipped inside his chest pocket. A single-use thermal cell. Once activated, it ran hot for maybe an hour. He'd been saving it for when the cold finally sank deep enough to slow his hands. That point was getting closer by the minute. His boots scraped over a ridge of brittle stone, and the beam from his headlamp skated across something that wasn't rock at all. A small shape curled near the base of a slanted boulder, almost blended with the frost. Ethan angled closer, heartbeat climbing. Not an animal. Not human. A girl. Alien. Her skin was a muted silver blue, the color of moonlit water, now dulled by cold. Her limbs were drawn tight toward her chest, like she had folded herself smaller to escape the wind. One of her eyes cracked open, glazed but aware, catching the glow of his headlamp. She didn't move away, didn't speak, just watched him with a quiet fear that trembled in her breath. Ethan crouched, the cold biting hard through the suit's joints. She was freezing. Slower breaths, rigid fingers, skin dimming to a grayish tint. He looked down at his chest pocket. The heat pack. His only one. The thing meant to keep him alive. He inhaled, the air sharp in his throat, and made the decision before fear could argue. Hey, he said softly, voice careful in the cold air. You're not alone. I've got something that'll help. He unclipped the heat pack, cracked it between his palms, felt it bloom warm against his gloves. Her eyes widened as he placed it gently into her hands. The warmth lit her skin from below, casting a soft glow across her silver-blue fingers. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Her quiet, stunned look said everything the night couldn't drown. The warmth from the small heat pack spread slowly across the alien girl's hands, casting a faint orange glow that pushed back the icy blue tint of her skin. Ethan watched her shoulders loosen just a little, the tight curl of her body easing as the heat seeped in. The wind still pressed against the rocks around them, humming like a persistent warning, but inside this tiny pocket of shelter the air felt less cruel. She blinked up at him again, her eyes clearer now, though still guarded. Ethan settled onto one knee to steady his balance, the cold biting at the exposed joints of his suit. He kept his voice gentle, careful not to startle her. My name is Ethan. I am not here to harm you. She did not answer, but her gaze followed his every move, measuring him. Her breathing was soft but shallow, like every inhale had to be negotiated with the cold. He noticed faint markings across her neck and collarbone, delicate patterns like frost branching over glass. They seemed to shimmer when the heat touched them. You are going to be all right, he added, though he was not entirely sure of it. He checked the slope behind them, the ridge rising into jagged silhouettes against a dim sky. There was no sign of his team, no flicker of a beacon. Only the long stretch of frozen stone and the heavy quiet that came with isolation. The girl drew the heat pack closer to her chest, curling around it in a way that reminded him of someone sheltering a fragile light. She finally spoke, her voice thin, almost musical. Why give this to me? Ethan exhaled, fogging the air. You were cold. She studied him as though trying to understand the shape of that answer. The wind picked up, sliding icy grit across the ground. Ethan shifted so his body blocked some of the draft from hitting her directly. Her silver-blue skin caught the faint glow of his suit's indicator lights, giving her an almost moonlit look. She whispered something in her own language, a soft string of syllables carried away by the wind before he could make sense of them. He touched a hand to the side of his helmet, activating his translator. A thin green light blinked, meaning it was attempting to detect speech patterns. The girl watched the device with mild confusion, then reached toward it as if curious, her fingers stopping an inch short, as if unsure she was allowed. Ethan let the helmet rest between them. She traced the air above it, fascinated by the blinking light. Sarai, she said finally, tapping her chest softly. He realized she was giving him her name. Sarai, he repeated carefully, and she gave the smallest nod. Her shoulders shook in another cold gust. Ethan glanced at the rock wall behind her and noticed a narrow split in the stone, just wide enough for shelter. A crevice formed naturally over time, dark but protected. We need to move you into better cover, he said. Just a few feet. Sarai tensed, gripping the heat pack tighter. Ethan kept his hands visible, palms out, the universal sign of calm. I will not force you, he assured quietly. But the wind is getting stronger. You will be warmer in there. She hesitated, looking at the crevice, then at him. Her expression shifted, no longer pure fear, but a cautious, searching uncertainty. She seemed to weigh the cold against the risk of trusting him. After several heartbeats, she nodded once, small but clear. Ethan steadied himself and offered his arm, not touching her, simply giving her something to reach for if she chose. Sarai lifted her hand slowly, fingers trembling, and rested them lightly against his sleeve. The contact was feather-soft, tentative. Together, they rose through the cold air as the wind pressed around them. And for the first time that night, Ethan felt a faint pulse of hope beneath the biting chill. The crevice welcomed them with a muted stillness, its narrow walls blocking most of the wind and trapping what little warmth their bodies carried. Ethan guided Sarai only as far as she allowed, letting her fingers rest lightly against his sleeve while she moved at her own pace. The moment they stepped inside, the air shifted from biting to merely cold, like the difference between standing outside a door and standing just past its threshold. Sarai eased herself down onto a smooth patch of stone, her breath leaving faint trails in the dim air. The heat pack glowed softly in her hands, casting ripples of orange across the silver blue of her skin. Ethan lowered himself beside her, careful to keep a respectful distance so she would not feel crowded. His suit chimed a low alert, reminding him his internal heater was running near its minimum range. He ignored it for now. Instead, he unclipped a small utility light from his belt and set it against the ground. The faint white beam illuminated the space enough to reveal the intricate ridges of stone curving above them, like frozen waves. Sarai watched the light with quiet curiosity, her eyes reflecting its glow. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was soft enough that the sound hardly reached him. You should have kept the heat for yourself. Ethan shook his head. You needed it more. She tilted her head slightly, as if trying to understand a puzzle. The translator flickered green again, slowly adjusting to her tone. Every few seconds it emitted a soft chirp, learning her language one strand at a time. She raised the heat pack closer to her face, letting the warmth brush along her cheeks. The faint markings along her neck brightened, almost like tiny lines awakening under the temperature change. Ethan realized they were not just natural patterns, but something her body reacted with, a biological response to heat. Does that hurt? He asked. Sarai shook her head. No, it remembers. Ethan hesitated, unsure what she meant. Before he could ask, she added, home was warm. Her words were quiet, almost like she was speaking to herself rather than to him. Ethan felt a soft twist in his chest. He looked toward the crevice opening. The night outside had deepened to a muted blue, the wind flattening drifts of frost across the rock shelf. Snow crystals moved like grains of shimmering dust caught in the beam of his headlamp. We will get through the night, he said. When the sun rises, I can try to get you to safety. Sarai lowered her gaze, her expression unreadable. Her fingers curled again around the heat pack, as if anchoring herself to it. After a few moments, She whispered something in her language, then paused to let the translator attempt it. The device chirped twice, processing the phrase. A soft, hesitant voice finally spoke through the helmet speakers. You should not help me. Ethan turned toward her. Why not? She hesitated, her breath trembling in the cold. My people do not trust yours. Ethan let the statement hang between them. It did not surprise him. Contact between their species was recent and fragile, built on misunderstandings and caution. Maybe trust starts somewhere, he said gently. A faint, uncertain breath escaped her, almost like a quiet sigh. She looked down at her hands. A moment later, she extended the heat pack half an inch toward him, as if offering to share it back. The gesture was small, barely more than a shift, but it carried a weight that settled deep in Ethan's chest. You keep it, he said softly. You need the warmth. Sarai studied him for a long moment, the glow of the heat pack reflecting across her eyes. Then she pulled it close again, but not with fear this time. With thought. With something gentler. Outside, the wind sang lower, like the storm was finally tiring, and the two of them sat in the quiet, the glow between them steady against the cold. The storm outside the crevice softened into a low murmur, like the world was finally catching its breath. Inside, the air held a fragile calm. Ethan adjusted the utility light so it cast a wider glow, revealing more of Sarai's features as she sat curled with the heat pack. Her breathing had steadied, no longer trembling with each inhale. The silver-blue hues of her skin had warmed, just enough to show subtle shifts in color along those delicate markings that traced her collarbone. They reminded Ethan of the faint shimmer left on desert sand after sunrise, something both natural and quietly beautiful. He cleared his throat softly. Sarai, can you tell me what happened? How did you end up alone out here? She turned the heat pack slowly in her hands, the warm light drifting across her palms. When she spoke, her words were spaced, as if she were choosing them carefully. I was traveling with a survey group. We studied the ice formations. The storm came too fast. The translator processed the phrase in small, gentle pulses. Ethan nodded, picturing the sudden drop in temperature, the wind carving across the plains without warning. You got separated, he said. She gave a small nod. The ground cracked. I fell. They could not reach me. There was no accusation in her voice, only a quiet resignation. Ethan felt a familiar ache settle behind his ribs. That feeling of being left behind, whether by accident or circumstance, was something he knew too well. Your group might still be looking for you, he offered. She looked toward the crevice opening, where the wind traced soft currents of frost across the stone. Maybe, she whispered. Her tone made the cold feel sharper again. Ethan shifted his position, angling his body so the remaining warmth from his suit could radiate slightly toward her without intruding. She noticed the gesture, her eyes flicking to the small vents near his shoulder that pulsed with faint heat. After a moment, she extended the heat pack toward him, offering it again, her hands trembling only slightly now. He smiled gently and shook his head. Keep it. Your body reacts to cold faster than mine. She lowered it back to her lap, but this time her expression softened, no longer just cautious but contemplative. Humans do not share survival resources, she said quietly. Not usually. Ethan lifted an eyebrow. Who told you that? She thought for a moment. It is what we were taught. That humans keep what they have. That they protect it for themselves. Ethan exhaled slowly, letting the soft light catch the frost forming at the edge of his visor. Some do, he admitted. Some do not. But kindness does not weaken anyone. It keeps us human. Sarai watched him with a stillness that felt deeper than silence. Her head tilted slightly, as if absorbing something she had not expected. The translator chirped, unable to interpret the quiet shift in her tone before she spoke again. Your warmth, she said softly. It feels different. Not just heat. Something else. Ethan felt the cold creep back into his fingers, but he did not move. It is just a choice, he said. A small one. She looked down at the heat pack again, holding it with both hands. As if the gesture itself carried meaning, she was still unfolding. Outside, the wind dipped even lower, brushing the crevice with a sound almost like a sigh. Sarai slowly leaned her shoulder closer to his, not touching, simply settling into the shared space more willingly than before. In the narrow glow of the utility light, the tension that had once separated them thinned into something quieter, something that felt almost warm. The quiet between them deepened into something steady, a fragile thread of warmth holding against the cold. Ethan adjusted the utility light again as its beam dipped, casting a softer glow across the curved stone walls. The storm outside had faded into a distant whisper, more memory than threat, and the air in the crevice felt still enough for their breaths to mingle in faint white clouds. Sarai shifted slightly, her movements slow but no longer weighed down by the biting chill. The heat pack rested against her palms, its glow softened but persistent, as if echoing the life returning to her features. Her markings shimmered faintly, brighter than before, reflecting the warmth in subtle waves. Ethan watched her carefully, scanning for signs of fatigue or hidden injury. "How are you feeling now?" he asked. She considered her answer, her eyes drifting to the glowing pack before lifting back to him. "Less cold," she said, her voice quiet but steadier. The translator managed her words with only a slight delay. "You protected me from the wind." Ethan shrugged modestly. "Just kept you on the warm side of things." Sarai looked at him with that same thoughtful stillness he had seen earlier, like she was reading something in the way he spoke, something new to her. She glanced at his suit indicators. "Your temperature is falling," she murmured. "You gave me the heat pack. You are getting colder." Ethan flexed his fingers, feeling the stiffness creeping in. "I will manage." She studied him again, as if the simplicity of that response was its own unfamiliar language. Her next words were hesitant. "My people say humans take warmth, but do not give it." Ethan exhaled slowly. Maybe they met the wrong kind of humans. Sarai tilted her head. "You are different." He let a quiet smile touch his lips. "You are different too." For a moment, she lowered her head, hiding her expression behind a curtain of silver-blue hair. The faint glow from the heat pack painted soft shadows along the ridges of her face. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Ethan, you could have left me outside." "I did not want to," he said simply. "I could not." She absorbed that, almost as if tasting the meaning. Outside the crevice, the wind shifted, and a low hum of distant ice settling echoed through the rocks. Sarai flinched only slightly at the sound, then relaxed again when she saw Ethan was calm. Trust, he realized, was beginning to take shape between them, thin but real. He leaned back against the rock wall, letting his body adjust to the cold while he thought through their next steps. "When daylight comes," he said, "we should try to climb toward higher ground. The transmitter in my suit might reach the rescue teams if we get to an open ridge." Sarai clasped the heat pack a little tighter, considering his plan. "I will slow you down," she warned. Ethan shook his head. "We go together." Her eyes widened slightly at that word, together, as if it held a meaning she did not often encounter. She whispered something in her language, a gentle sound that brushed the air like a breeze. The translator struggled for a moment, then offered its closest interpretation. "You are safe to be near." Ethan blinked, startled by the simplicity and weight of it. Sarai looked away quickly, as if embarrassed by her own words. The markings on her collarbone shimmered again, their soft glow matching the warmth in her hands. In the dim crevice, surrounded by cold stone and fading light, the distance between them felt smaller than it had since the moment he found her. And for the first time since the storm began, the night did not feel so impossibly long. The quiet inside the crevice held steady, a thin layer of stillness resting over the fading echo of the storm. Ethan checked the time display on his wrist panel, its dim digits flickering as the battery labored in the cold. Dawn was still hours away, but the worst of the night had passed. He could feel it in the air, less biting now, more like a cautious pause from the planet itself. Sarai sat beside him, the heat pack cupped gently in her hands, its glow casting warm reflections along the markings that lined her collarbone and shoulders. Those markings pulsed faintly, almost like they were responding to her breath. She watched the shifting light without speaking, her expression softened into something distant and thoughtful. Ethan adjusted the utility light, angling it slightly toward the crevice opening. The beam caught slow-moving flakes of frost drifting down like pale dust, each one glimmering briefly before disappearing into the shadows. "When the sun rises," he said quietly, "the air should warm just enough to make the climb safer. We will move then." Sarai nodded, but there was a subtle tension in her posture. Not fear, something heavier. "You intend to return me to my people," she said. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Of course. They will be looking for you. Sarai hesitated, her fingers curling slightly around the heat pack. Perhaps, but when they find us together, they may not understand. Ethan frowned softly. Understand what? She searched for the right words, her gaze drifting toward the narrow sliver of sky visible beyond the crevice. The translator struggled to keep up with the gentle rhythm of her voice. Where I am from, she said slowly. The idea of relying on someone from outside our kind, it is considered weakness. Ethan leaned back slightly, letting that settle in the air between them. Helping someone is not weakness, he said. Needing help is not either. Sarai lowered her eyes. My people do not see it that way. Her voice held no bitterness, only certainty. Ethan rested his gloved hands on his knees, his breath misting into the dim light. What about you? She blinked, startled by the directness of the question. What do you believe? She looked down at the glow in her hands. The pack's warmth washed gently across her skin, brightening the ridges of her markings. Tonight, she said softly, you offered what you needed to survive. You shared it with someone you did not know. Ethan shrugged lightly. You were freezing. And still, she whispered, you chose to give. He felt her words settle in a quiet place inside him, a place shaped by old instincts and simple truths. Someone in need, he said, is someone worth helping. Sarai lifted her gaze to him, her eyes reflecting the faint orange light. Where I come from, help is offered only when it benefits the giver, she murmured. That is our logic. Ethan gave a gentle smile. Maybe your people have not met the right kind of help yet. She held his gaze longer this time. The crevice felt warmer, or maybe it was simply the way she looked at him now, less guarded, more open, as if a door had shifted inside her. The translator chirped softly, unable to interpret the silence that followed. Sarai finally spoke, her voice quieter than before. Ethan, your choice tonight. It does not follow my people's understanding. It does not follow mine. Her fingers tightened around the heat pack, a faint tremor running through her hands. But it feels right. Ethan felt something small and warm unwind inside him at her words. Sometimes, he said, the heart understands before the rules do. Outside, the wind settled into a gentle hush, as if the night itself leaned closer to listen. And in that stillness, something wordless passed between them, soft as the glow of the fading heat pack and steady as the breath they shared in the narrow space of the crevice. The first pale hint of dawn touched the edge of the sky, a thin silver line stretching across the frozen ridge. Ethan felt the shift in the air before he saw the light, a slight easing of the bitter cold that had gripped the night. He adjusted his position against the rock wall, joints stiff from hours of stillness. Sarai noticed the movement and lifted her gaze, the soft glow from the fading heat pack reflecting gently across her features. Her markings shimmered with a muted brightness, responding to the gradual rise in temperature. The light is coming, she murmured, almost in relief. Ethan nodded. That is our chance. If we move slowly and stay close to the ridge, we might reach a point high enough for my transmitter to get a signal. Sarai held the heat pack a moment longer, as if absorbing the last of its warmth. Then she offered it back to him in a quiet, deliberate gesture. You will need it now, she said softly. Your body temperature has fallen. Ethan looked at her, surprised. The pack had dimmed, its energy nearly spent, but the gesture mattered more than the heat it held. She was giving it back because she cared whether he made it out of the cold. Keep it, he said, shaking his head gently. It did its job. You are warmer now. She studied him with a seriousness that made the air between them feel heavier. You helped me because I could not survive alone. Now you are the one growing colder. Ethan managed a small smile. I can still walk. That is enough. Sarai lowered her eyes, her fingers curling around the dim pack. Your people choose kindness even when it costs you. I do not understand this. Ethan felt something quiet settle in his chest. You do not have to understand it right away. Just walk with me when the sun rises. We will get through this together. Sarai looked up again, the faint morning light catching her eyes. She gave a small nod, fragile but certain. As they prepared to move, the crevice vibrated subtly, a deep hum resonating through the stone beneath them. Ethan tensed, listening. Not wind, not shifting ice. Something else. Sarai's posture straightened, her head tilting slightly. Do you hear that? He asked. She nodded. It is not the storm. The hum grew stronger, a low pulse that felt alive against the rock. Ethan activated his helmet sensor, watching as the display flickered weakly. A line spiked across the screen. "There is energy movement below us," he muttered, "deep in the ridge." Sarai's markings brightened in a way he had not seen before, responding instinctively to whatever vibration traveled through the stone. "This mountain is unstable after the storm," she said, her voice quiet but certain. "We must leave now." Ethan rose carefully, helping her steady her footing. The crevice that had sheltered them through the night now felt too small, too fragile. Each tremor echoed through the ground, subtle but insistent. As they stepped toward the opening, a thin fracture chased along the stone floor, a whisper of danger beneath their feet. Sarai tightened her grip on Ethan's sleeve without thinking, her eyes wide. The warmth of her hand pressed through the fabric, trembling slightly. Ethan looked at her, then at the ridge ahead. "Stay close," he said. "We move together." She nodded, her breath steadying. The faint dawn light spilled across the frozen landscape, fragile and new, as they stepped out of the crevice and into the awakening world. And behind them, deep within the mountain, something shifted again, a reminder that the day might demand as much courage as the night had. But neither of them walked alone now. The ridge greeted them with a thin wash of pale morning light, the first true warmth they had felt in hours. The air was still cold enough to sting Ethan's cheeks, but the harsh bite of the night had softened. Frost glittered across the stone like scattered shards of glass, shimmering as the sun slowly climbed. Ethan kept one steadying hand near Sarai without touching her, offering silent support as they stepped out from the shelter of the crevice. The ground beneath them trembled again, a faint pulse running through the stone. Sarai paused, her silver-blue markings brightening instinctively, as if responding to the vibration. "The mountain is shifting," she murmured. "We must move quickly but carefully." Ethan nodded, scanning the ridge for the safest path upward. A narrow slope curved toward a higher shelf, where the sky opened more fully. If they reached that point, the transmitter in his suit might catch a signal. "We will take that path," he said. "Slow steps, steady footing." Sarai observed the route, then gave a small nod. Together, they began the climb. The slope was uneven, fractured by the storm and the shifting of the ridge. Ethan tested each foothold before placing his weight, and Sarai mirrored his movements with a cautious grace. Her steps were light, almost soundless, but her breath still carried a faint tremor from the cold. After several minutes, they reached a narrow ledge. Ethan activated the transmitter, hoping the increased elevation would help. The device crackled weakly, but no signal appeared. He frowned slightly, adjusting the angle. Sarai watched him, her eyes thoughtful. "Your device searches for your people," she said. "Yes," Ethan answered. "But we might need to go higher." Sarai's gaze shifted toward a tall ridge jutting above them. The climb looked difficult, but possible. "There is a position there," she said quietly. "It looks stable." Ethan followed her gaze. "You are right. If we can reach that point, the transmitter might pick up something." As they continued upward, the ground rumbled again, deeper this time. Sarai reached instinctively for Ethan's sleeve, steadying herself. The touch was light, but full of trust. The tremor faded after a few seconds, and they pressed on. When they reached the base of the taller ridge, Sarai hesitated. Her markings glowed faintly, reflecting an inner conflict. Ethan turned to her. "Are you all right?" She took a slow breath. "My people, if they find us together, they may think you influenced me. They may assume you interfered with my judgment." Ethan blinked. "Interfered? All I did was help you survive." Sarai looked down. "Among my kind, accepting help from another species is questioned. They believe it changes us." Ethan's brow softened. "Help does not change who you are, Sarai. It just means someone cared enough to stand with you." She lifted her gaze, her eyes reflecting the growing morning light. "But they may not believe that. And they may not trust you." Ethan exhaled. "Then I will explain. And if they still do not believe me, I will stand by my choices." Sarai looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. Then she reached into the folds of her clothing and pulled out a thin metallic band, shaped like a ring but with delicate etchings running along its surface. She held it between her palms. "This is a personal temperature regulator," she said softly. "It is meant to help our bodies endure extreme environments. I was given one for the survey mission." Ethan paused, watching her carefully. Why are you telling me this? Sarai extended the band toward him, her hands trembling slightly. Because you will need it more than I do now. And because this is the way I honor your kindness. Ethan stared at the band, stunned. It was not just a device. It was a symbol of trust, a gesture her people rarely offered beyond their own kind. Sarai, he murmured, you do not have to give me this. I do, she whispered. It is my choice. The dawn light touched the metallic band, casting a soft reflection across her silver-blue skin. And in that moment, Ethan realized her quiet gesture carried more meaning than words ever could. The metallic band in Sarai's hands shimmered with the soft light of morning, its etched patterns catching each ray like tiny mirrors. Ethan stared at it for a long moment, feeling the weight of what she was offering. The air around them was quiet, the wind easing into a slow exhale, as if the mountain itself was listening. Sarai held the band out farther. Her expression was steady but fragile, as though she feared he might refuse and yet hoped he would not. Ethan finally reached out, closing his gloved fingers gently around the smooth metal. The warmth from her hands lingered on its surface. Thank you, he said softly. Sarai lowered her gaze. It means I trust you. Entirely. Ethan slipped the band into a safe compartment on his suit, knowing the gesture mattered more than the device. He looked toward the ridge above them. Let us finish the climb. Together, they moved carefully along the jagged path. The sun climbed higher, warming the air by just a few degrees, enough for the frost to soften beneath their boots. Sarai walked close beside him, the faint glow of her markings brightening each time the ground trembled. She seemed more certain now, her steps steadier, as if the morning light had settled her fears. When they reached the top of the ridge, the sky opened around them in a vast sweep of pale blue and rolling clouds. Ethan activated the transmitter again, angling it toward the horizon. The device crackled, hesitated, then released a sharp tone. A signal flickered onto the screen. Ethan's breath caught. I have something, he murmured. Sarai stepped closer, watching the blinking patterns with cautious hope. The transmitter emitted another tone, stronger this time. A voice, distorted but recognizable, broke through the static. Ethan Ward, if you can hear this, respond. Relief washed through him. He pressed the communicator. This is Ethan Ward. I am on the eastern ridge. I have one survivor with me. We need extraction. The response was faint but clear enough. Hold your position. We are tracking your signal. Sarai looked at him, her eyes shimmering. The markings along her shoulders pulsed with a soft brightness, like a quiet echo of emotion. Your people are coming, she said. Ethan nodded. And yours will find you too. She hesitated. When they arrive, they may question why I am with you. They may not understand what you did. Ethan turned fully to her, the morning light catching the frost at the edges of his visor. Sarai, the truth is simple. We survived because we helped each other. Nothing more. Nothing less. She searched his face, reading something in the calm of his voice. Slowly, she reached out, her fingers brushing against the sleeve of his suit. The touch was light, but steady. You changed something in me, she whispered. Something I did not know could change. Ethan's chest tightened with a quiet warmth. You changed something in me too. The wind picked up gently, carrying the first distant hum of approaching engines. A soft glow spread across Sarai's markings, responding instinctively to the sound. She stepped closer to Ethan, not out of fear, but connection. No words were exchanged. None were needed. As the rescue craft descended, its shadow stretching long across the ridge, Sarai looked at Ethan one last time before they were found. In her eyes was a silent truth, deeper than gratitude and stronger than the cold that had tried to claim them. It was the quiet acknowledgement of what had passed between them, human warmth meeting alien stillness, and something new formed in the space between. The engines roared gently as the craft settled, but the moment remained untouched. And as the light reflected in Sarai's silver-blue eyes, it looked, for the briefest breath, profoundly human.